But first, we want to start with This Week in Russiagate.
It is as if there are no shoes on the Trump human centipede that are not about Russia. Russia, Russia, Russia.
This cloud about collusion with Russia will hang over him no matter where he stands.
It certainly feels like we're in the opening stages of a devastating political chapter in American history. Evidence is mounting for the president's meddling in the Russia probe.
Tom Friedman said the election hacking is at the caliber of a Pearl Harbor or a 9/11. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. Donald Trump now sits at the threshold of impeachment.
I personally think it's over. I don't think there's anything that can be done that can stop this at this point. Cacophony, this gushing of lies, problems, questions, chaos that will stop this presidency in its tracks.
You told the Washington Post last week that, quote, there's a smell of treason in the air when it comes to this investigation.
A lot of people are afraid to use the T word, treason, but in the end, that's what people are investigating.
It does look like collusion. It does look like he's listening to Putin more than he is American intelligence. And frankly, I've never seen that before.
And tonight, explosive new evidence in what is becoming the biggest scandal, or at least one of them in American history. Now, it's something we have been saying would be exposed for months. According to new reports tonight from The Hill's John Solomon and Circa News' Sarah Carter, there are brand new FBI documents that show the Russian nuclear industry officials kicked back millions and millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation, all while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State and helped approve the Uranium One deal, which gave Moscow, Russia, Vladimir Putin control of 20% of American uranium, the foundational materials for nuclear weapons. And tonight, they're also reporting the FBI now has evidence that Russia for years has been doing this, and they're reporting the FBI has evidence that literally they used bribery to gain control over America's uranium industry, all while the Obama administration did nothing. And the Clintons benefited to the tune of nearly $145 million. You want a real Russia collusion story? We've got it.
This from The Hill, October 17th, 2017. The FBI uncovered a Russian bribery plot before Obama administration approved controversial nuclear deal with Moscow. Before the Obama administration approved a controversial deal in 2010, giving Moscow control of a large swath of American uranium, the FBI had gathered substantial evidence that Russian nuclear industry officials were engaged in bribery, kickbacks, extortion, and money laundering, designed to grow Vladimir Putin's atomic energy business inside the United States, according to government documents and interviews that we'll get to in a little bit. Federal agents used a confidential U.S. witness working inside the Russian nuclear industry to gather extensive financial records, make secret recordings, and intercept emails as early as 2009 that showed Moscow had compromised an American uranium trucking firm with bribes and kickbacks in violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FBI and court documents show. They, the FBI, also obtained an eyewitness account backed by documents indicating Russian nuclear officials had routed millions of dollars to the U.S. designed to benefit former President Bill Clinton's charitable foundation during the time Secretary of State Hillary Clinton served on a government body that provided a favorable decision to Moscow. The racketeering scheme was conducted with the consent of higher-level officials in Russia who shared the proceeds from the kickbacks. Rather than bring immediate charges in 2010, however, the Department of Justice continued investigating the matter for nearly 4 years, essentially leaving the American public and Congress in the dark about Russian nuclear corruption on U.S. soil during a period when the Obama administration made two major decisions benefiting Putin's commercial nuclear ambitions. The first decision occurred in October 2010, when the State Department and government agencies on the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, which Hillary Clinton and Attorney General Eric Holder both sat on, unanimously approved the partial sale of Canadian mining company Uranium One to the Russian nuclear giant Rostodon, giving Moscow control of more than 20% of America's uranium supply. In 2011, the administration gave approval for Rostodon's Tenex subsidiary to sell commercial uranium to U.S. nuclear power plants in a partnership with the United States Enrichment Corporation. Robert Mueller is currently the special prosecutor in charge of investigating alleged collusion between the Trump administration, the Russian government, and Russian meddling into the 2016 American presidential elections. Mueller was the director of the FBI in 2009 when The Hill alleges the FBI was made aware of a racketeering scheme by the Russian government to utilize bribery and kickbacks to secure the sale of the Canadian-owned Uranium One company. The sale required approval from the United States State Department, led by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, because uranium is sensitive material used in the creation of nuclear bombs. Before we take a deeper look into the allegations made by The Hill, let's take a look at what we already know in regards to the Clinton Foundation accepting donations from people involved in the Uranium One deal. The New York Times, April 23, 2015. Cash flowed to the Clinton Foundation amid Russian uranium deal. As the Russians gradually assumed control of Uranium One in 3 separate transactions from 2009 to 2013, Canadian records show a flow of cash made its way to the Clinton Foundation. Uranium One's chairman used his family foundation to make 4 donations totaling $2.35 million. Those contributions were not publicly disclosed by the Clintons, despite an agreement Mrs. Clinton had struck with the Obama White House to publicly identify all donors. Other people with ties to the company made donations as well. Before Mrs. Clinton could assume her post as Secretary of State, the White House demanded that she sign a memorandum of understanding placing limits on the activities of her husband's foundation. To avoid the perception of conflicts of interest beyond the ban on foreign governments' donations, the foundation was required to publicly disclose all contributions. To judge from those disclosures, which list the contributions in ranges rather than precise amounts, the only Uranium One official to give to the Clinton Foundation was Mr. Telfair, the chairman, and the amount was relatively small, no more than $250,000, and that was in 2007 before talk of a Rostodom deal began. But a review of tax records in Canada, where Mr. Telfair has a family charity called the Fernwood Foundation, shows that he donated millions of dollars more during and after the critical time when the Foreign Investment Committee was reviewing his deal with the Russians. With the Russians offering a special dividend, shareholders like Mr. Telfair stood to profit. His donations through the Fernwood Foundation included $1 million reported in 2009, the year his company appealed to the American Embassy to help it keep its mines in Kazakhstan, $250,000 in 2010, the year the Russians sought majority control, as well as $600,000 in 2011 and $500,000 in 2012. Mr. Telfair said that his donations had nothing to do with his business dealings and that he had never discussed Uranium One with Mr. or Mrs. Clinton. He said he had given the money because he wanted to support Mr. Giestro's charitable endeavors with Mr. Clinton. Frank and I have been friends and business partners for almost 20 years, he said. Mr. Giestra is a partner in the Uranium One deal, and he had donated $31.3 million to the Clinton Foundation a couple of years earlier. Mr. Telfair's undisclosed donations came in addition to between $1.3 million and $5.6 million in contributions, which were reported from a constellation of people with ties to Uranium One or Eurasia, the company that originally acquired Uranium One's most valuable asset, the Kazakh mines. Amid the influx of Uranium One connected money, Mr. Clinton was invited to speak in Moscow in June 2010. The same month, Rostodom struck its deal for a majority stake in Uranium One. The $500,000 fee, among Mr. Clinton's highest, was paid by Renaissance Capital, a Russian investment bank with ties to the Kremlin. Renaissance Capital talked up Uranium One stock. In addition, Renaissance Capital turned up the same year as a major donor, along with Mr. Giestra, the Canadian businessman who donated $31 million to the Clinton Foundation, and several companies linked to Uranium One and Eurasia, to a small medical charity in Colorado run by a friend of Mr. Giestra's. In a newsletter to supporters, the friend credited Mr. Giestra with helping get donations from businesses around the world. This reported by Zero Hedge, July 26, 2016. Clinton Cash. Devastating documentary reveals how Clinton went from dead broke to mega wealthy. Clinton Cash, a feature documentary based on the Peter Schweizer book, has been posted on YouTube for all to view free just in time for the DNC. Clinton Cash investigates how Bill and Hillary Clinton went from being dead broke after leaving the White House to amassing a net worth of $150 million with over $2 billion in donations to their foundation. Just to highlight a few of the scandals detailed in the documentary: Russian purchase of U.S. uranium assets in return for $145 million in contributions to the Clinton Foundation. Bill and Hillary Clinton assisted a Canadian financier, Frank Giestra, and his company Uranium One in the acquisition of uranium mining concessions in Kazakhstan and in the United States. Subsequently, the Russian government sought to purchase Uranium One, but required approval from the Obama administration given the strategic importance of uranium assets. In the run-up to the approval of the deal by the State Department, 9 shareholders of Uranium One just happened to make $145 million in donations to the Clinton Foundation. Moreover, the New Yorker confirmed that Bill Clinton received $500,000 in speaking fees from a Russian investment bank with ties to the Kremlin around the same time. Needless to say, the State Department approved the deal, giving Russia ownership of 20% of U.S. uranium assets. Is it starting to become clear that all of these tax-exempt charitable foundations, such as the Clinton Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Open Society Institute, the Carnegie Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Kellogg's Foundation, the Tide Foundation, might not in fact be about charity, but might in fact be about corruption, bribery, and tax evasion? That couldn't be. The mainstream media would report that, wouldn't they? I bet they would. Anyway, $145 million paid to the Clinton Foundation prior to the State Department, led by Hillary Clinton's approval of the Uranium One sale. Let's get back to the bombshell report by The Hill that alleges that the State Department and the FBI, the Obama administration, were aware of Russian bribery and kickbacks in order to get the Uranium One deal passed. FBI, Energy Department, and court documents reviewed by The Hill show the FBI in fact had gathered substantial evidence well before the committee's decision that Vadim Mikerin, the main Russian overseeing Putin's nuclear expansion inside the United States, was engaged in wrongdoing starting in 2009. Then Attorney General Eric Holder was among the Obama administration officials joining Hillary Clinton on the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States at the time the Uranium One deal was passed. Multiple current and former government officials told The Hill they did not know whether the FBI or DOJ ever alerted committee members to the criminal activity they uncovered. Mikerin was director of Rostodon Tenex, that's the company that would purchase Uranium One, in Moscow since the early 2000s, where he oversaw Rostodon's nuclear collaboration with the United States under the Megaton and Megawatts program and its commercial uranium sales to other countries. In 2010, Mikerin was dispatched to the U.S. on a work visa approved by the Obama administration to open Rostodon's new American arm called Tenem. Now to the court affidavit. The United States District Court, District of Maryland, July 25, 2014. The United States of America vs. Vadim Mikerin. Count 1. Beginning no later than 2009 and continuing through at least in or about January 2012, in the District of Maryland and elsewhere, the defendant Vadim Mikerin did conspire with others known and unknown to obstruct, delay, and affect commerce and the movement of articles and commodities in commerce by extortion, as those terms are defined in Title 18 United States Code Section 1951, that is, the defendant conspired to obtain the property of Victim 1 with Victim 1's consent induced by wrongful use of force, violence, and fear, including fear of economic loss in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1951. The facts and circumstances set forth in this affidavit demonstrate that there is probable cause to believe that Mikerin conspired with others to commit extortion in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1951 and money laundering in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1956. Background of the racketeering scheme. Mikerin is employed as the General Director of Tenem USA, a Maryland-based subsidiary which is based in Moscow, Russian Federation. Tenex is a subsidiary organization of Rostodom, the Russian state-owned nuclear corporation. Tenex was the Russian commercial agent responsible for the sale and transportation of this material to the United States. Mikerin was integral to the execution of the operation of this agreement. Through my investigation, I have determined that Mikerin, blank, and other actors, blank is a redacted name that the FBI claims has since passed away. It is possible that this person is actually in witness protection. Mikerin, blank, and other actors likely located overseas participated in a scheme to obstruct, delay, and affect commerce and the movement of articles and commodities in commerce by extortion, and those terms are defined by Title 18. That is, Mikerin attempted to obtain the property of a U.S.-based company seeking to contract with Tenex in the Russian Federation, with that company's consent induced by the wrongful use of force, violence, or fear, including fear of economic loss. Further, Mikerin, blank, and others laundered the proceeds of the racketeering scheme through a place outside the United States with the intent to promote the carrying on of specified unlawful activity, racketeering, in order to conceal or disguise the nature, the location, the source, the ownership, or the control of the proceeds of specified unlawful activity, knowing that the monetary instrument or funds involved in the transportation, transmission, or transfer represented the proceeds of some form of unlawful activity, and knowing that such transportation, transmission, or transfer was designed, in whole or in part, to conceal or disguise the nature, location, source, ownership, or control of the proceeds of specified unlawful activity. Beginning in 2009, Mikerin solicited a confidential source, whom blank had identified for Mikerin, to enter into a contract with Tenex. Under this contract, CS1, who was introduced to blank around 2003 by a mutual contact in Florida, whom CS1 understood to be loosely affiliated with Russian and Eurasian organized criminal elements, was ostensibly to provide Tenex with lobbying and consulting services and assistance and public relations support with the Russian nuclear energy industry, in exchange for kickbacks. Mikerin referred to these transactions as the system, or the window, in communications regarding the transactions. CS1 was uncomfortable with the agreement and approached the FBI with information about the scheme. Therefore, FBI and DOJ authorized CS1 to participate in the kickback scheme in order to document Mikerin's illegal activity. Under the terms of the first contract in 2009, CS1 was set to receive $150,000 over 3 months. So the FBI and the Department of Justice were aware of the kickback scheme dating back to 2009. Under the second contract, overseen by the FBI and Department of Justice, CS1 was to receive $550,000 from Tenex over an 11-month period. This time, however, Mikerin demanded that CS1 kick back roughly half of the contract payments by providing Mikerin $50,000 every other month via wire transfer to an account in Cyprus. In 2011, Mikerin, again ostensibly on Tenex's behalf, contracted with CS1 for an 11-month extension of the same contract. This time, however, Mikerin directed CS1 to deliver the kickbacks in various methods, including providing cash payments directly to Mikerin, along with wire transfers to other offshore accounts. In 2011, as part of the third contract with CS1, Mikerin claimed a wire transfer to Wiser Trading had been lost and directed CS1 to make wire payments to a new recipient company, the company Lila Global Limited, incorporated in the United Kingdom with accounts out of Latvia. The wire transfer payments made from CS1 to Mikerin pursuant to the extortion scheme were as follows. November 2009, $35,000. May 2010, $50,000. May 2010, $50,000. January 2011, $50,000. February 2011, $50,000. April 2011, $50,000. September 2011, $50,000. October 2011, $25,000. The cash payments made from CS1 to Mikerin pursuant to the extortion scheme were as follows. January 2011, $25,000. October 2011, $25,000. January 2012, $50,000. Information obtained from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York revealed a pattern of transactional activity conducted in the District of Maryland and elsewhere between several U.S.-based companies and these three shell companies beginning no later than 2009 and continuing through the present. These payments often involved around a number of transactions with the stated purpose of consulting services or invoice. These records also reflect CS1's kickback payments to both Leela Global Limited and Wiser Trading Limited. In addition, the Federal Reserve records showed that from April 2009 through February 2011, TLI, presided by blank, transferred $536,000 to Wiser. From July 2011 through July 2013, TLI wired $773,000 to Leela. And from May 2013 through present, TLI wired. Conclusion: based on the facts set forth above, your affidavit submits respectfully that there is probable cause to believe that Mikerin has conspired with others to commit extortion in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1951 and money laundering in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1956. Your affidavit respectfully requests that a criminal complaint and arrest warrant be issued as prayed. Now we return to the Hill article that exposed FBI and Department of Justice awareness of the Russian racketeering scheme dating back as far as 2009. The investigation was ultimately supervised by then U.S. Attorney Rod Rosenstein, an Obama appointee who now serves as President Trump's Deputy Attorney General, and then Assistant FBI Director Andrew McCabe, now the Deputy FBI Director under Trump, Justice Department documents show. Both men now play a key role in the current investigation into possible but still unproven collusion between Russia and Donald Trump's campaign during the 2016 election cycle. McCabe is under Congressional and Justice Department Inspector General investigation in connection with money his wife's Virginia State Senate campaign accepted in 2015 from now Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, at a time when McAuliffe was reportedly under investigation by the FBI. The probe is not focused on McAuliffe's conduct, but rather on whether McCabe's attendance violated the Hatch Act or other FBI conflict rules.
Jill McCabe, wife of now acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe, ran an unsuccessful race for Virginia State Senate in 2015. But her husband may have crossed the line when he advocated for her campaign and played a role in raising more than $500,000 from political action committees connected to Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe. McCabe is now under investigation by the Justice Department's Inspector General and the Office of U.S. Special Counsel. The Hatch Act prohibits federal employees in the executive branch from engaging in election activities and partisan campaigning after work hours, particularly within the FBI.
The connections to the current Russia case are many. The Mikerin probe began in 2009 when Robert Mueller, now the special counsel in charge of the Trump case, was still FBI director. And it ended in late 2015 under the direction of then FBI Director James Comey, whom Trump fired earlier this year.
Did you show copies of your memos to anyone outside of the Department of Justice?
Yes. The president tweeted on Friday, after I got fired, that I better hope there's not tapes. I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night, because it didn't dawn on me originally, that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel.
The probe into Mikerin ended under James Comey's watch. James Comey, who essentially attempted to get President Trump impeached by leaking out classified information. Robert Mueller, the special investigator currently in charge of overseeing the investigation into President Trump's administration, Russian collusion, and meddling into the 2016 election, was appointed by Rod Rosenstein, who oversaw the Mikerin probe dating back to 2009.
Over to the Mueller special counsel investigation, which you are overseeing, does his relationship with James Comey give you any pause in terms of the appointment, of the decision to appoint him for that post?
No, I've explained that I made the decision to appoint Director Mueller, and based upon his reputation, he had an excellent reputation, really bipartisan support for his integrity, and that's why I made that decision. I'm not going to be able to comment upon what he may or may not be investigating, but I can assure you that if there were conflicts that arose because of Director Mueller, or anybody employed by Director Mueller, we have a process within the department to take care of that. We have ethics experts who review any allegations of conflicts, so I'm confident that we'll reach the right result.
So it has come out in some of the attorneys that he has hired that several of them have made donations to Hillary Clinton, to the Clinton campaign. Does that bother you? Does it make you believe that those people have any reason to be questioned in terms of their impartiality in this investigation?
You know, the Department of Justice, we judge by results, and so my view about that is we'll see if they do the right thing.
On top of the already mentioned conflicts of interest, former White House official and Hillary Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's brother Tony Podesta worked as a lobbyist for Uranium One. This from The Observer, April 7th, 2016. Panama Papers reveal Clinton's Kremlin connection. John and Tony Podesta aren't fooling anyone. Almost lost among the many revelations in the Panama Papers is the fact that Russia's biggest bank uses the Podesta Group as a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. Though hardly a household name, this firm is well known inside the Beltway, not least because its CEO is Tony Podesta, one of the best-connected Democratic makers in the country. He founded the firm in 1998 with his brother John, formerly chief of staff to President Bill Clinton, then counselor to President Barack Obama. Mr. Podesta is the very definition of a Democratic insider. Outsiders engage the Podestas and their well-connected lobbying firm to improve their image and get access to the Democratic bigwigs. And lobbying registration records do in fact show that the Podesta Group lobbies for Sburbank, the biggest state bank in Russia. And this from OpenSecrets.org. Uranium One paid the Podesta Group $60,000 in the year 2015, and that went on for a few years. Also of note, this from the New York Post, October 16th, 2017. Panama Papers journalist killed by car bomb. The Panama Papers are what exposed the Podesta Group's connection to Russia. Daphne Galizia, journalist who led the Panama Papers investigation into corruption on the tiny island nation in the Mediterranean, was killed in a car bomb on Monday. The public has been bombarded with cries of collusion between the Trump administration and the Russian government since the 2016 presidential election. Very little evidence has been put forward. There is, however, significant evidence, including financial trails and court documents, showing collusion, or at the very least connections, between the Clintons, the Obama administration, and the Russian government. Let's get back to the bombshell report by The Hill that detailed many of these connections. The case also exposed a serious national security breach. Mikerin had given a contract to an American trucking firm called Transport Logistics International that held the sensitive job of transporting Russians' uranium around the United States in return for more than $2 million in kickbacks from some of its executives, court records show. bringing down a major Russian nuclear corruption scheme that had both compromised a sensitive uranium transportation asset inside the U.S. and facilitated international money laundering would seem a major feather in any law enforcement agency's cap. But the Justice Department and the FBI took little credit in 2014 when Mikerin, the Russian financier, and the trucking firm executives were arrested and charged. The only public statement occurred a year later when the Justice Department put out a little notice press release in August 2015, just days before Labor Day. The release noted that the various defendants had reached plea deals. By that time, the criminal cases against Mikerin had been narrowed to a single charge of money laundering for a scheme that officials admitted stretched from 2004 to 2014. And though agents had evidence of criminal wrongdoing they collected since at least 2009, federal prosecutors only cited in the plea agreement a handful of transactions that occurred in 2011 and 2012, well after the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States approval. The lack of fanfare left many key players in Washington with no inkling that a major Russian nuclear corruption scheme with serious national security implications had been uncovered. On December 15, 2015, the Justice Department put out a release stating that Mikerin, a former Russian official residing in Maryland, was sentenced today to 48 months in prison and ordered to forfeit more than $2.1 million. A plea deal for 48 months in prison for crimes that took place over the course of a decade that could have landed Mikerin in prison for decades himself. Racketeering, bribery, illegal kickbacks, and the illegal laundering of millions of dollars to subvert the American government into approving the sale of 1/5 of America's uranium to a Russian-controlled company. And he was given a plea deal for 48 months in prison. It's amazing they didn't go after the bigger fish. The final plea deal made no mention of crimes that took place prior to the approval of the Uranium One sale to Russia, in spite of the FBI having the financial records to prove guilt. Incredibly convenient for the people who approved the sale. The FBI and the Department of Justice took little credit for an investigation and conviction of a foreign government agent who attempted to subvert the American democracy. The type of bust that under normal circumstances political people use to bolster their careers and public image. Perhaps the people involved had something else to bolster their careers. Robert Mueller, James Comey, Rob Rosenstein, Andrew McCabe, Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, the Obama administration, and of course, the Clintons. The very people pointing their finger at the Trump administration. The very people currently using the authority of the government to investigate any potential collusion between the Trump administration and the Russian government. They themselves should be under criminal investigation for potential crimes against the American people in coordination with the Russian government. And why would they do this? For personal gain, of course. The Clinton Foundation received $145 million. $145 million in charitable donations from investors in the Uranium One sale prior to its approval. I wonder how many people received kickbacks that we don't know about. Since the election of Donald Trump, the Democratic Party and the deep state, see the Trump Golden Shower dossier, have seemingly been hell-bent on removing Donald Trump from office. Desperate people are willing to do desperate things. Wouldn't it be a great plan to accuse your opponent of committing the very crimes you have actually committed? And of course, the mainstream media. How controlled, how corrupt and disingenuous does a media corporation have to be to scream Trump, Russia, 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 Russian collusion for 12 consecutive months with little to no evidence, while remaining completely silent on the actual, provable, financially traceable, FBI court document-backed criminal Russian collusion between the Clintons, key Obama administration officials, the very people pointing their fingers at the Trump administration, and the Russian government. The corporate mainstream media is nothing more than the talking head of the establishment of power. American Pravda. Let me ask you this. What do you want America to look like in 30 years? The American corporate banking-controlled government has proven to be corrupt time and time again, and the mainstream media is complicit, openly spewing establishment propaganda. The government and the media together lead us into war after war after war, utilizing lie after lie after lie. Millions of people have died. The First Amendment guarantees freedom of the press. The First Amendment. The Founding Fathers understood that the press is vital to the freedom of a nation because without it, there's no one left to expose the crimes of government. But the press in America has been subverted, infiltrated by the same corporations, the same global bankers who control the politicians. 6 corporations control 90% of the mainstream media. Diversity of choice is an illusion. And this is why you see the attack on so-called fake news. They will do anything to hold on to their monopoly over the control of information. I could go work for a big news organization, and I would never be permitted to do reports like this. It is the separation from corporate money that empowers people to speak truth to power. So I instead rely on you. It is very rare in life that a person finds true purpose, and I believe I have found mine in speaking truth to power. Support me financially for as little as $1 a month on Patreon. I don't sit here making false promises of being a perfect person. Trust me, I'm not. Or having a perfect understanding of the world, or of never getting information wrong. But I do promise to be honest and from the heart. I do promise to wake up every morning with the sole intent of making America a better place, not just for us, but for our children. I believe in the Constitution, that it protects our natural rights, that are endowed upon us by God, and by nature if you don't believe in God. Our rights are birthrights, and they cannot be taken away by any government. Help me change the world. I want to, but I need your help. Thank you so much. Please share this link. I know you are out there. You're listening. You're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I can't see the future. I'm not here to tell you how this is going to end. I'm here to tell you how this is going to begin. I'm going to start this broadcast, and when I do, I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. A world without controls and boundaries. A world where anything is possible.